Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Thursday edition of our budget overview and budget review. Before we begin, following the publishing of our schedule, I neglected to inform the town manager that I'd like to have one item added to this evening, which would be the appointment of a vice chairperson in the event of my absence. If the board is so compelled, I'd like to ask for their permission to add that to tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to add that to the agenda?
I move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And with that, are there any nominations for the appointment of a vice chairman or chairperson, excuse me?
I move to nominate Eric Mitchell as vice chair of the Finance Committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any other nominations? Eric, would you be willing to serve?
Oh, I'll do it.
Thank you.
I'd be pleased to serve.
All those in favor of Eric Mitchell?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Great, thank you. Mr. Town Manager, I believe we're going to begin tonight with the fire department.
We are. We're joined tonight by Select Board Member Maureen Bernard. And,
Maureen, welcome.
And the usual cast of characters at this table, and a much larger cast of characters out in the audience. And as we get into the department budgets, we can introduce the teams that put those budgets together and oversee those. But we thought we would start tonight with the fire department. It's a much smaller cast of characters for them this evening in the back. And I don't remember how many, I'm going to zip through because I was pressing up and they were going down. Well, then, that makes no sense.
So, Chief, welcome. Thank you. If you'd like to...
Similar to the police budget, the fire budget this year is essentially a level service budget. One of the notes in here that is not reflected in the budget itself, the chief and the deputy successfully secured for the town a $1 million grant through FEMA in the SAFER program, which allowed for the funding for 3 years of 3 firefighters. And we are working actively right now to try to plan ahead for when those positions come onto the budget to try to accommodate them. And we have a few things that we're working on with the finance team to try to make that a seamless transition. So again, not reflected in the budget, but we wanted to draw attention. I believe, as we note here, the end of FY25 is when the grant period ends, so we have about another year and a half, and we'll have more, certainly more on that topic as we move forward. But I would turn it over to the chief. The notes sort of speak for themselves. If you want to draw attention to anything particular, Bob, feel free.
Well, yeah, I wasn't prepared for that.
Then we'll go right to questions.
No, it's a pretty simple budget with a modest increase. There's no major big increases or decreases. I wouldn't call it level funded, but it's pretty close. And a lot of it is obviously driven by contractual obligations. And as everybody knows, the price of gasoline has gone up and down like a roller coaster. So we're doing our best to, like I told the select board, and throw a dart and try to guess what the gas price is going to be. But yeah, other than that, it's a pretty basic. There's not much difference in this from last year.
Thanks, Chief. Paul?
Just what Mr. Bartha just mentioned, the SAFER grant, when will that start again? 2023, 2024?
We're in it now. It's a 3-year grant.
So we're in it now.
About
Okay.
a year and a half left. Yep.
So we're gonna, at the end of 25, we'll be, at that point, do we look for?
Going into the 25 budget, we'll have. Yeah.
Say that again?
The grant expires February of 25.
Okay.
So going into the FY25 budget is when.
So then we would be looking forward to, hopefully, keeping those 3 people in the
Correct,
department.
and we're looking at a few different areas within the budget where we think those positions may at least partially offset cost. And some of the programs that we currently run, we're taking a close look at to determine the efficacy of those. So we're not ready to get into the weeds on that yet, but we wanted to telegraph to this board that that conversation will be coming.
I think it's a very well-prepared, concise budget, Chief, and I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Mike?
No, I guess the only thing I would, it's, at some point, perhaps the town manager could provide us with, this is another area, and I think these grants are great until they expire. And then we've got to find funding for these positions, and it's not just obviously the fire department. We have a number of areas within our budget that we have cliffs within the next 2 years. Can you provide us, maybe through you, Chair, Mr. Chair, the town manager, Ronnie, can provide us with a list of all those areas that we have where we're going to see a diminishment of the funding source or a ceasement of the funding source in the future? Just because we've as we look through this, I'm assuming what the grant we got is $1 million a year. Again, $800,000 from ESSER. Got $800,000 of additional money for the trash. There's no question we're going to have an additional $500,000 each year for the way we're going with the Folk Tech School. So, we're at a point over the course of the next 2 years where we could be facing somewhere in the range of $3 million additional costs that are currently not within our tax levy, which, as we talked about the other night, is at its limit. And in order to be able to basically balance this budget, we've made assumptions for the first time about revenues beyond what we ever have in the past. So, again, certainly not looking, this is a great budget, and the fire department does a great job, but just in general, if we can get that information to us.
And just as a clarifying point, I would separate some of those out. The ESSER program in the schools and the SAFER grant that we have on the town side are the only two where you'll see these, what I would say is budget 101, you don't use one-time revenues to cover ongoing expense. So the overwhelming majority, actually all of the ARPA money that the select board approved as part of their ARPA plan was directed toward one-time expenses. So we have two, one on the school side, one on the town side that we have to be prepared for. And when we found out the grant was awarded is when we started talking about some of the ways we could be prepared for that. But it's coming. I'm not saying it's not coming. But things like the Essex Tech, those are baked in legislative increases. Those aren't necessarily one-time expenses. So I just wanted to distinguish between the two.
Well, these won't be one time.
What's the dollar value on the grant per year?
It's $1 million. It's 3 firefighters, fully funded, salaries, wages, benefits, everything.
So I think $333 a year because it's $1 million over the course
Oh,
of the
okay,
years.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That's all right.
It's a 3-year grant
All right, that-
for
okay,
$1
that
million
makes-
total.
Yep, perfect.
I wish it was yearly, but.
Aaron?
I'm all set.
Eric?
Could you just clarify where our staffing would be if we hadn't gotten a grant? Would we be we're 32 firefighters, so would we have been at 29 if we hadn't gotten a grant?
Yeah, so this puts us up to, I would say, pre-recession, 2008, 2009 levels. So we're at 4 groups of 12. So it's a captain, 3 lieutenants on each group, and then the rest of firefighters. And we added a person to fire prevention. So we had our longtime fire prevention officer, Captain Brooks, retired last January. And like myself and the town manager, we call him a unicorn. He was just an absolute. He was a workforce, but he was overwhelmed, and he was starting to drown a little bit. So we added a second person in that position, and I can tell you right now, it's showing dividends. It's working out fantastically. So we're at what I would consider right now full staffing with this grant.
Thank you.
Arthur?
It looks like pretty much the salary and overtime pretty much matches the increase completely, so it's really just a salary budget, basically. So otherwise, it looks, everything else is kind of staying even, so looks good to me. I'm good.
Anything from the audience? Bill?
Bradstreet Town Meeting member, Precinct 1. We have an excellent fire department. I believe they're fully, well, they should be fully staffed and fully equipped with everything, every piece of equipment that they need or could use. Is it possible there's a wish list of items that they'd like to have, they might only use once a year or never use, but it would be a benefit to them to have the equipment? Can we find the money? I don't know, I'm just asking a question, if there's something that they would like to have and maybe use very sparingly, but they'd like to have it just in case.
Chief, are there any items you need that you don't have to do your job?
I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
And- But I will, please go to the microphone to answer that question.
Notice I said need, not want. Are there any items you need to do your job, Mr. Chief?
Yeah, I mean, of course, everyone has a Christmas list, but no, I think we're one of the things that the deputy and myself are focused on is making sure that our members have the most recent, up-to-date, state-of-the-art equipment and training, and I feel pretty confident that we're at a pretty good level right now. I would never say no if they were going to throw some more money at me, Bill, but I'm realistic about it, and I think we spend our money wisely, so I think we're actually in pretty good shape. Next year, we might be back for a truck, Bill, so that might not a one-time use, but, yeah, no, I think we're good.
Thanks, Bill. Is there a motion?
Move the budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
So up is bad, up is down, and down is up.
Really? Already?
He gave me a new clicker tonight, and it does the opposite of what the one yesterday did, so this is very confusing.
Well, you must have done something to him.
What's going on?
Land use and community services.
Okay, there we go. Okay.
I'm very dizzy.
I'll
now.
note, Bill didn't ask the management budget if they needed any new toys or anything. Only the fire department gets questions like that. So next, we're going to walk through the land use and community services department budgets. 5 of the 6 divisions are rolled up into the budget that you see on page 68 in your budget books. And there are breakouts of those divisions that follow. Recreation is budgeted separately, but it is part of the land use family. And this slide is typically provided. Often pieces move around within this budget, which when you get to the division level makes it look like there are swings going on. We like to provide this roll-up because it shows that across these 5 divisions, a number of these divisions share staff. Some years we're sort of dialing, depending on how much time an employee is spending with one division or another, we may adjust that. So the bottom line is that these divisions are going up in aggregate by 1.24%. So we like to start here. We don't spend a lot of time here, but before we start going budget by budget, we like to start with the roll-up. And we spoke briefly during the budget overview about the reduction in the senior social services, which is not actually a service reduction. It's a change in the way that we're administering a particular program, which we can talk about when we get to that budget. Rodney's going to not give me that back. So we're going to start with inspectional services, which you'll find on page 69 in your budget books. We're joined by our building commissioner, Tim Hudon. This is his first time through the budget process in this role, and he has been a welcome addition to the town. Is thriving in his role, and we're very happy to have him on board. The adjustments that we're looking at in the inspectional services budget are twofold. We have a position that is budgeted at top step right now, which we are either close to filling or have just filled, and that is for the assistant building commissioner. And one of the changes that you're looking at, there's a shift from operating to salary and wage. There's a change at the state level in terms of how the sealer of weights and measures function is done based on population. Danvers had always contracted that service out. And the new regulation says that communities above a certain population threshold, which includes Danvers, that role has to be done by a staff person. Fortunately, our plumbing inspector was willing to take that on. So we were able to negotiate an adjustment to his compensation. He now has the tools. So it's really a shift from operating up to personnel to cover that function. That's really it. With that, we'd be happy to take questions that you have about this budget.
Arthur?
I'm good. I'm set.
Eric?
What does the sealer of weights and measures do? Thank you. That's what I thought, but, okay.
Grocery store sales?
Do you want to
Scale?
Can you check my scale at home?
If the gallery is done shouting, Tim, would you like to?
Tim Hudon, Building Commissioner. So yes, to answer your question, so the sealer of weights and measures is responsible for, really it's consumer protection. So gas stations get measured, any sort of scales, so anything that you would have at supermarkets, pharmacies, anything like that where the customer is paying for goods and service. There is not only annual inspections, but also for any complaints that might arise. We would go out and we would confirm whether or not there was an issue with the pump, the scale, and that, like I said, again, that's a consumer protection. It's something that was handled. It was outsourced for many years, I believe, since 2008, if I'm correct. But that gentleman since retired. And again, there's a new at the state level. They're pushing a new regulation, and because Danvers is over the 20,000 in population, that it needs to be a full-time appointed position. Excuse me, not a full-time position, but an appointed position within the town, and we were luckily able to fill that because there's a lot of communities out there that are struggling to find people with the new changes at the state level.
Thank you.
Wally?
Obviously, it's not a full-time position, correct?
It is not. No, I apologize. I misspoke. It's an appointed position within the town. It's not full-time.
All set.
So we actually go into like the Walgreens and CVS and check their scales too?
Yep. So anytime, especially if they get a new scale, it needs to be calibrated. So we have equipment here that is certified through the state that we would use to check the calibrations on any scales, pumps, anything that is used for goods and services in the town.
Fair enough. Thank you. That's it.
Mike?
I'm good, thank you.
How often do you check the scales? Once a year? Is it an annual thing?
Typically, yes, or if there is a new scale, if they do work, if they need to replace something, or if there is a complaint made against a certain establishment.
Mm-hmm. And I saw the training services was it's up a little bit. Is that to train the person that's taking the job? Is that what happened?
That could be for anybody department-wide. As I'm sure most people know, there's been some staffing changes in the department recently over the past year and a half, and it just brought to light that at any point we could need to bring on somebody who is untrained or uncertified, and that they would need to have the money, the funds available to do any sort of training certifications that might be needed.
All set?
It's a big department. How many inspections do you do annually?
So
Or I should say it's a busy department.
So I would say about all told, we're right around 3,000. So that would be plumbing, gas, electrical, and building, with commercial and residential inspections. So we're around the high 2,000s, if not close to the $3,000 mark.
Thank you. Questions from the audience? Mr. Bates?
Thank you. Town meeting member Bill Bates, Precinct 4. I rise to ask the Finance Committee to reduce the budget requests for this department. And if I could, through you, Mr. Chairman, could I ask when the gentleman started as the commissioner? What was his start date?
In his current role?
Yeah.
Or when he was hired by the town? I'm not clear on the question.
He is building commissioner. When did he become building commissioner, I guess is what I'm asking.
January. He was hired as the assistant building commissioner.
Okay, he
and
was
was
assistant
promoted
for
to
us.
building commissioner in January.
And January would have been, thank you for the clarification,
January 2023?
Correct.
Okay.
2023. Very good, thank you. I've provided a copy of what my concerns are to the board and to all the members, but I do want to share it with the public. I have been involved with modular homes, a modular home project in the town of Danvers since April 13th, 2017. That's 6 years ago tonight that I first visited a modular home in Danvers with my then boss, Ted Speliotis, the state representative. 6 years later, that home sits unlivable conditions. The Danvers family, who were looking to build their dream house at 17 Bridal Spur Road, deserve better than this. The facts are that the Danvers Building Department was required by law to inspect this modular home and units upon installation or, quote, promptly after, end quote. The units were installed on August 11th, 2016, and the Danvers Building Department did not inspect the units until September 19th, 2016. During this 40-day period, weather conditions were such that rain entered the home in numerous rooms and began to show suspected building code violations behind the closed-in walls of this home, which was manufactured in a plant in Pennsylvania. Since then, there has been finger-pointing from the state to the town and the town to the state. It's who's responsible for this issue. The game of ping pong that has left this Danvers family without the consumer protection that have been in place for years regarding modular homes. The town's position is that that has done all it can do. The fact that this home has been sitting in an unfinished and unsafe manner for over 6 years leaves no room for this stance. The administration position that the building department had done all it was required to do is not supported by the facts. I suggest to you that had all the applicable laws and regulations been followed by the state and the town, this Danvers family would not be in court right now. On February 27th, 2023, I personally received a summons from the law firm representing the modular home manufacturer to provide all documents in my possession in both my position as a former state employee and as a current Danvers town meeting member. I have complied with that subpoena. As a longtime Danvers town meeting member, I am asking the Finance Committee to recommend a reduction in this budget request of $29,897 for the fiscal year 2024 budget request. And that basically it would level fund them. Folks, you know, I just need to explain that the primary, if you look in our book, the administration's, the primary responsibility of inspectional services is to ensure public safety in the built environment. This isn't a new issue. There was a family in 2011 in Massachusetts that had a modular home built by the same manufacturer. They went bankrupt trying to get through the program. We've had problems. We had one on Poplar Street many years ago, built by the same manufacturer, and it sat there as a horrible thing to the neighborhood for many years. What I want to do with this department, has been a changeover. There's been, you know, certainly new commissioners need to be given a chance to do their job. But please, as a board, send a notice to our administration that when a department fails as miserably, and this is just my opinion at this point, as miserably as this department has failed, you don't get a 6% increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Questions?
Let it go.
I have a, you know, my initial comment and thought is, I certainly, first of all, I have a tremendous amount of sympathy for that family, and you know, any family that's displaced is, you know, it's certainly a tragic situation, and I feel for them. But that being said, I don't know that punishing because this is really a punishment for inspectional services, what you're suggesting, a punishment for inspectional services in not giving them their budget increase for a department that most of whom were probably not even there at the time that this alleged incident happened. It's not something that I could support. So while I commend you for your efforts in supporting this family, and I certainly hope that they are success. It seems as though their gripe, because it seems like there's a theme here with this particular manufacturer, that their gripe is with them. I hope that they are successful with some litigation with that company, because it seems that that's where the problem lies. But I'm certainly not willing to affect the welfare of a department that I want to see grow and flourish, and being punitive toward them, I don't think is the appropriate step that I would take.
Move to approve the budget.
I just want to make sure there are no other comments from the audience. Great. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Next is public health, page 71 in the budget. Scanning the room. Our public health director is on a cruise, so we will cover for him.
Just throw him under the ship.
This is a department, again, turnover, new, Frank, I always want to call him Calagione. Frank Giacalone is our health director. Came to us from elsewhere on the North Shore, lives in Beverly. He has a new assistant on board. They're doing very well. And the public health nurse sort of rounds out the group, and level service budget.
Paul, any questions?
No questions. No,
Mike?
The only one that always comes out with me, and I have to be careful with this because I won't tell my old story about why don't we license cats that landed me in trouble one time. But is animal control usually in a public health budget? I mean, is it? I'm guessing it's across the board. They're in different
It's
locations.
neither common nor uncommon, is what I would say.
Okay.
There is no standard.
Thanks.
I don't think I have any questions.
No questions.
I do have a question. Don't know if there's an answer. Is Public Health Department that is responsible for coyote wrangling in town?
Aaron Henry's responsible.
No, so let me, just the
Personally, he's
backstory. So just last night, right, so where we are, there are increasing sightings of coyotes, and we are not in a wooded area. And so just last night, I started hearing my first barking and howling. And so it's actually on my mind, ironically.
Aaron Henry, Director of Land Use and Community Services. Nice to see you all again. I think it kind of goes both ways. That goes with animal control, and again, different communities are handling that differently when it comes to some of the coyote mitigation measures we're seeing. I think you're seeing broader responses that are probably involving a little bit of the atypical characters, given some of the community's aggressive stance on that. We do have the occasional complaint with coyotes, but at this point, we don't have a plan for coyotes. We had a bear out, I think, in Mr. Blake's way, and we were able to work with the Department of Environmental Management on that issue. So I think, again, kind of depends on the severity and the instances of how we will respond.
Fantastic, thank you.
Since you're up there, I didn't have a problem with coyotes, but yesterday morning, when I left, I didn't even tell you this, Mike, a turkey
Wild turkey, yeah.
came out of the tree and landed on
can help you with
the
that.
hood of my car. So what are we doing, and Maureen, you've seen the turkeys, right? What are we going to do about the turkeys, Aaron?
The bullies?
I think we should eat them. No, I know, there's 4 or 5 running around our neighborhood too, and they
Did you
really
jump on your
don't-
car?
They
Scared
don't,
the
they
heck
will
out
not
of me.
move. You have to be
I
aggressive.
almost had a heart attack, and
Yeah.
Mike would have had to run the office.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
We don't want that.
Linda would have run the office.
True.
That's it, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
Move the budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Next is Planning and Economic Development. Brian Kelly is our new planning director. He joins us this evening. The theme continues. It's no real change in staffing, slight decrease in operating as we're consolidating. We are in the process of rolling out a standard organization-wide e-permitting program, and so a lot of the expenses that were being budgeted individually in departments are being consolidated IT. There's also a small reduction in this budget for, we're abandoning a software program that the prior director utilized. It's a program that our chief assessor in the back, John LaBelle, utilizes as well. So we've maintained a CoStar subscription, which is useful for commercial real estate and economic development and assessing type utilizations, but didn't see the need to have two. And we would be happy to take questions about planning and economic development.
Arthur?
I don't have any questions.
Eric?
Just a question around the consulting services, just a small increase there. If there's anything in particular that we are needing more consulting, or if the rates are up or what have you?
Several years ago, that line item was a little bit higher, and traditionally, we also used to budget for some special projects for, like, HDC had a small line item in our budget. Preservation Commission had a small line item in our budget. So my request to the town manager when this process started in December was to try to sneak some of that money back in case a board or commission develops a project throughout the year, that we have a little bit of money on the side to meet those. I think the one in particular that I had in mind was the Historic District Commission wants the Witch Monument cleaned. And so something like that where you're not doing it typically year after year, but once in a while you have to take care of those things.
Thank you.
Polly?
I'm good. Thank you.
Aaron?
I'm good.
Ted?
I'm all good.
Mike?
Nope,
Paul?
thank you.
Yeah, just for my own personal information, could you explain to me, under your strategic goals, prepare zoning bylaw amendments related to the recently adopted MBTA Communities Act? What does that involve, and some background information, please?
Sure, I'm going to try to condense about 4 years of legislation into a minute, so bear with me.
Thank you.
In 2021, there was a law passed. It was a change to 40A Section 3A, which is planning, which is related to zoning and planning, and the powers given to zoning and planning boards. In that law, it required communities, what are called MBTA communities. There are 101 MBTA communities. These are communities that have commuter rail, bus, and other light rail. We are an adjacent community. We have none of those things. We are adjacent to one of these communities. Because we are an adjacent community, we have a requirement that we need to have a minimum land area around either an area of concentrated development. So in us, it's for us that would be the Maple Square area, basically downtown. The idea is that it would we have to implement a zoning bylaw change to have at least 15 units per acre as a minimum density. So the density in this area right now is goes from about a by right of 12 units per acre to 36. That's what's on the ground right now. And basically, we have to, because of this law, we have to change that minimum of 12 units to 15 units per acre. So it's a small tweak. We just got a letter from the Attorney General last week. Their stance has completely changed with the new Attorney General. Before, it used to be like, well, if you don't comply with this law, then you won't have access to certain funding. That is completely changed on its head as of 2 weeks ago. Now we're coming after you for housing discrimination. So that's the state's posture. It has completely changed. We had already planned on doing this anyway. The point is that there's a little bit of work that's going to have to be done in order to change that legislation this fall. So that's the plan, is to make that change from 12 units per acre to 15 units per acre to be compliant with the law.
Will is that going to directly affect that project up on, no? So
No,
we're all
that's-
right there? with
Yeah,
that.
it doesn't affect anything that's on the ground.
How about
period.
permanently? The buildings that we have now, it's not, you don't go backwards on it, right? So-
Correct, and we don't actually have to, this is horrible to say, we
Right.
don't actually have to build anything.
Right.
We just have to get the zoning to be a minimum of 15 units per acre. But like I said, most of the downtown area, we allow much higher through permitting.
Right.
Like I said, up to 36 units per acre is allowed right now.
And if I could add on to what Brian's saying, so this has been a big topic of conversation at the MMA. What I would say is that the steps that the town took in 2017 and 2020, I'm oversimplifying this, but brought us 95% of the way toward where the 2021 state law required. So whereas some communities are now starting from scratch and trying to determine how to update their zoning book to comply with the law, we're looking at what tweaks we need to make to the book that we have to make sure that we stay in compliance so that we can continue to access state funds and, to Brian's point, not have the Attorney General filing suit against the town. So we're going through the process right now, working with a consultant to determine, what do we need to do and bring forward in the fall to rectify this. So it's stated as a goal for the year that will start in July 1st, but it's already something the staff is well aware of and working on.
Would this, or does it affect us in any way with the services that the, quote, MBTA offers us? Do we still have any, do we even have
We
bus
don't have any,
service?
sir.
No, it's a hard no.
No, we're not getting any at all.
So we're not getting, okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah, this is essentially to avoid getting sued, but that's not the main reason.
For
to do it.
services they don't provide.
For services they don't provide.
Right,
But
okay.
the idea is that people from Danvers go to Beverly, go to Salem, go to other places. The real thing here is that this actually allows us to, it opens up a lot of potential funding. I've actually applied for a grant. We wouldn't be able to get the grant if we weren't compliant.
Okay.
It's a $75,000 grant for a transportation master plan. It all feeds in, so.
That's good, okay, thank you. All set, sir.
Anything from the audience? Is there a motion?
Motion to move the budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Next is senior and social services, and it's a budget we don't actually want to talk about because it means we have to talk about Pam's news. And I don't mean to put Pam on the spot, but we're joined tonight by Pam Parkinson, who is our senior and social services director. She will be retiring this spring, which none of us want to acknowledge, but we need to acknowledge. I'm going to invite Pam up in a moment to speak, but I want, we did talk the other night that really the change here is we're changing the way that we're delivering meals. It's a grant-funded program. We've had a really hard time finding drivers to operate our vehicles, as the school department was talking about the other night. So the reduction here is not, we're not cutting the budget, we're shifting the funding for how that program is administered. So page 75 in the budget is the senior social services budget, but I would invite the director to the podium for any questions that the committee may have or anything she'd like to share.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Pam Parkinson. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Paul?
Well, first of all, thank you for your service, and I hope you have a wonderful retirement.
Thank you.
And my only thing I was concerned with was, how do you feel your transportation vehicles are holding up? And I don't know, do we have anything, are we in need of more vehicle replacement?
We are,
Would that be
yes.
in the warrant this year? I didn't have a chance to look at it. I just don't. No.
We typically have never had any of our vehicle replacements in any warrant articles. We've been relying in the past primarily on our Friends group. We apply for a very competitive grant through MARTAP, through the state, and if we're successful, which we have been in the past in getting it, it's an 80-20 split. So the state pays 80% and we only have to come up with the 20%. There was one year, I think, recently, right after Rodney came on board, where the town split that 20%, 10% town, 10% Friends. So that has never come up. Aaron and I have talked about the fact that it should be in a warrant article because the Friends are already supporting a lot of other initiatives that are unfunded for the senior center, and we are in need of 2 new vehicles in this next grant season, which usually is just about right now, but we were just notified that this, because of a delay with the state with supplying last year's vehicles, it's being postponed to like July, which means that new vehicles won't even be coming in until July, August, September of 2024. But that's something that we need to be working on as soon as that grant is available to apply for.
How many vehicles do you have now?
6 vehicles. One vehicle that we just recently had to replace a transmission in at the cost of like $4,900, which was a lot of money for an old vehicle, but we needed it to try to buy us some time to get through until we get the new vehicles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Pam, just as a follow-up, if I may, one of the things we've heard a lot about over the last couple of nights is, especially in terms of transportation, is staffing shortages. You've got 6 vehicles. Do you have 6 drivers?
We are just about at almost 6. All of our drivers are part-time, so several of them have been working over their average 19 and a half hours a week in order to keep things moving. We just thought we hired a driver. We had an interview, and we were very excited about it, and she came back and said she found another opportunity for more money and more hours, so she declined the offer, so we're back to square one there. Staffing in general, all around, has been extremely challenging. Not just with transportation or Meals on Wheels, it's assistant director, it's supportive day program staff, it's, that's primarily it. But our nutrition program, which is why we're making the change, where we're giving up the ownership of that program and giving it back to the ASAP, which is HBAN, which used to be, for most people know it as North Shore Elder Services. They merged with Merrimack Valley. They're now called HBAN. So our consumers will not be affected. They will still receive the same meals that they've been getting delivered to them, probably by the same drivers that we're hiring right now, but they'll be paid and supervised and managed by the staff at HBN instead of by myself. And that means, so when somebody doesn't show up and somebody needs to deliver 25 meals on one route, it doesn't have to be myself or my program coordinator or my outreach worker. We only have 4 full-time staff in the senior center total right now, and 5 when we have our an assistant director come on. So it just, and the cost of the program also was another $14,000 or $16,000 that was coming out of the town's coffers in addition to what we were getting for the grant. So it wasn't sustainable any longer, so that was the reason for that. But staffing is a huge challenge.
Sure. Thank you. Mike?
How old is the structure now, the senior center structure? Is it 25 years yet? Or
It's at least 25. I think it might be 25 or 26.
I know when we built that structure 26 years ago, 27 years ago, it resulted in a dramatic change in the programming that we did within, obviously, our senior center. You've been around there for a good portion and seen the changes. What do you foresee over the course of the next decade, the types of changes that we're going to need to provide? I mean, I think it would be fair to say that what we provided to our senior citizens in town, just in the latter part of the last century, 1997, 1998, was significantly different than what you are doing now. For example, I don't think we had any Alzheimer type daycare programs or any of that type of stuff. Do you see a continued change in that area as we go forward?
Well, definitely, based on the growth of seniors that is anticipated over the next 20 years, first of all, we're not big enough to be able to manage that, the need within our current footprint of the senior center. Our space is very tight. We're very happy that we have the Veterans Department there now, but we gave up a conference room space there for that. We also have, our public health nurse was working out of there, and she's still working out of there part-time because she needs space. So we, as beautiful and as large and wonderful as our senior center is, it's an amazing building that I'm extremely proud of. But we're going to need more space to meet those needs. We also are going to have to look at, the seniors that we're serving today are different than the seniors that we were serving 25 years ago. So one of the things that people want and expect is to be able to have a good meal. And the food that we're able to provide right now, unfortunately, does not meet that mark. It's coming in from a caterer, it's getting prepared at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's coming over and it's sitting in a warming table in our center for 3 or 4 hours before it's served. And the quality, at best, is mezza. It's really, today we had a traveling chef. They do that once a month, and it was awesome. They come in, they cook everything fresh right there on site. We had like 80 people there today. On a regular day, we have about 14 people for our meal program. So I think if we want to stay current and want to really meet the needs, nutritional needs of our people, I'm a senior now. You wouldn't be seeing me going to the senior center for lunch in my retirement. I love the people there and everybody's great.
Would you
but
like to be a part-time van driver, though?
I've actually been a part-time van driver, believe it or not. But yeah, I could do that. I just don't like doing the wheelchairs, but there's a lot of training involved with that. It's not as easy a job as one might think. So I guess that's to answer your question. I think we just need to move forward to better meet the needs of the constituents that we're trying to get into the senior center that, probably wouldn't come in because they think it's just a place for old people, which is not the case at all. We have a very active group of people. Unfortunately, they just don't eat there.
Thanks.
Ted?
I have one quick question, but Steve, are building upgrades to the senior center eligible for CPA money?
I'm sorry, I can't.
I'm asking Steve if building upgrades to the senior center would be eligible for CPA proceeds.
Don't think the building is that old. I don't believe so.
Okay. So I'm guessing that you're probably more familiar with the senior housing in town than most people.
A little bit, yeah.
What are some of the physical upgrades that you think those buildings might need? Because I know those are probably eligible for CPA proceeds, right?
I'm aware of issues with water and mold in certain elderly projects that are very concerning. That's really been my biggest involvement with one particular what do you call it?
Facility.
Area,
Yeah.
one building area that is very problematic, that's older, that has no basement, but has crawl space underneath it, and there's been a lot of problems with water and people actually getting physically ill because it hadn't always been corrected properly or timely.
Do they have adequate elevators and other kinds of
In the
accessibility?
buildings, yeah, in the buildings that have the elevators, then yes, they do. I know over at Tapley, the elevator is great. There's no problems there. Over at Stone Street, there's no elevators, so people have to be able to be ambulatory enough to live on the second level. But, otherwise, I think, they're well-maintained. I think there's just some of the buildings are older
Yep.
and really need some attention.
Okay. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a few questions. How many meals a week are you delivering? And what is the frequency of delivery that residents receive? Is it, 1 week they get the full week drop-off, or is it every day?
It's every day.
3 meals? Or
Well, it depends on the individual and what their care plan is, how it care plan is written. Some people get 1 meal a day, 5 days a week. Some people may get 1 meal a day, 3 days a week. Some people get their hot lunch and then they get a cold supper for the evening, so they're getting 2 meals a day, anywhere between 1 and 5 days a week. We also give frozen meals for weekends, so those people on a Thursday, we give weekend meals just in case there's a weather event or something on Friday, so we want to make sure we have an extra day to get the food to them. So they may get, 2 meals on Thursday for Thursday, and then another 2 meals for Saturday and 2 meals for Sunday. So that's a lot of meals. Most routes have an average between 25 and 30 drops, deliveries per route, and we have 4 different routes.
Okay.
So about up to 120 a day delivered. And then what we do for congregate meals is basically our supportive day program, which is our captive audience that we can feed, and about 14 people from the community that come in for that program right now.
sounds like you're consolidating the deliveries as much as possible then. Okay, thank you. Enjoy your retirement.
Thank you.
Paul?
No, but thank you for all you do from a personal level. My mom's there and loves the meal today, so enjoy your retirement.
Thank you.
Eric?
Before your retirement, do we have any experience with the CACFP program, the reimbursable from the federal government? CACFP, the Child and Adult Food Care Program.
Oh, TADCF?
No, the Child and Adult Program is the one that it provides the reimbursement to meals, nutritional meals for schools, for child care centers, all of those things, and so.
We don't. No, we don't qualify for that. When I used to work in Peabody and we had a medical day program, we were able to tap into that program where it was a medical model, but we're not eligible for that as a social model or for a regular general senior center.
That's good. Pam, how many trips, transportation, how many trips do you take a week or a month? Do you have that?
I just did the numbers. It's in the like 6,000 to 8,000 a year range. We're driving people to and from not only our own supportive day program, but in an attempt to try to drive some revenue, which is much needed in our transportation department, we contract with some other programs and provide transportation for residents from Danvers going to other programs, and also people from outside of Danvers coming into Danvers or to other programs. And that's actually what keeps our program alive right now, because these are people going to medical programs. We're able to get reimbursed $18 per ride each way, which is huge for us. So for instance, we pick people up in Beverly at the Harbor Light Assisted Living and bring them over to the Cummings Center to the PACE program. And we're picking up 5 or 6 people at one spot and dropping them off at one spot. And we're getting $18 for each individual each way. So that pays at least 1 or 2 drivers for the day when we have, that run. But it's not 5 days a week, unfortunately. But transportation is very busy. We bring people food shopping, we bring them to the pharmacy, we bring them to the hairdressers, because people may not think that's as important as a medical appointment, but if you're a woman who needs their hair colored, it's more important. And we brought people to a cemetery, to funerals or wakes when they can't get to it. I mean, basically, medical needs are the top priority, but we do not refuse a ride to anybody if we have a van and a driver to get them where they need to go.
So yeah, that was my next question. How do you have, sometimes are you not able to meet the need?
There are times, yes, we don't have either a van or a driver or a van with a driver to get somebody someplace, so we will ask people if they can reschedule their appointment, and we will try to get them in. We ask people to call, as soon as they're leaving their doctor's appointment and they have their next appointment, we tell them to call us and let us know, and we can schedule it ahead so that they know it's covered. Unfortunately, sometimes people wait until the day before, and by the day before, things get pretty full.
The vehicles, we talked a little bit about, how old are the vehicles? Are they relatively new?
I think the newest ones we have are about 4 years old. We have, the others are, there's the two that need to go are like, I think they're 07s or 08s. They're pretty old.
Yeah.
But they're still moving along, so we're using them up until the.
My mind always goes towards liability. That's why I'm asking these questions. You had, I also read in here that the staff organizes volunteer transportation program. What is volunteer transportation program?
That's
Is
something
that like me just saying, I'll come down and drive?
Exactly.
Do we check out the people that are driving?
We do. We get a driving record on them, and we verify that they're insured, and we do purchase a additional insurance policy if, to cover them for any other liability and to give them peace of mind. Unfortunately, since COVID, that program has really kind of fallen to the wayside. People weren't, didn't want to be putting people in their car and driving in their car during COVID. And we do have a couple of people that we can call now when we're stuck, if there's somebody that really needs a ride and they can't reschedule. So we do utilize them on that level, but that is something that we do need to look at, trying to get rejuvenated.
How many years have you been here?
It'll be it would be 18 in September.
Yeah. In my regular job, I do come across a lot of people that have needs to use the senior center and the senior services, and almost universally positive reviews. So you've done a great job over the past 18 years, and congratulations on that, and good luck in the retirement.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any questions from the audience? Bill?
Again, Bill Bradstreet, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. It's probably going to be covered in a warrant article with replacement buses. Will they be electric?
I don't know.
I haven't seen.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No,
for
I
real.
haven't seen any.
Him maybe, but not you.
I haven't seen any of that
Oh.
vehicles through that process.
Okay, I thought I'd ask. Any other question, or is he, did you find some money for us?
Is he asking for questions from us?
Through you, sir.
Is that it,
That's
Bill?
three.
Oh, I have one other request more than a.
All right, question number 3, go ahead.
As a parting gift, so to speak, for her dedicated service to the town, are we in the process, or is it completed? I know what y'all, I always ask if you're working on it. Fully lighting the parking lot at the senior center. Maybe Rodney can help.
We
us
may
with that, too.
overlight the lot just to stop getting the question, Bill. I don't know. We've been out there a couple times to check the lumens and the reach of the bulbs, and we've cut some trees back. But I don't know that we're ever going to get it where you need it. But we'll take another look.
I'm not looking for Fenway Park. I'm just looking for the nights when I do go up there for a meeting and leave and step out in the parking lot. The pavement's black. A lot of other areas are black. There's a light here. There's a light there. I don't want you to flood the lot. I just want it better lit. It'll be a nice parting gift.
Name one of the light bulbs after you.
No, I want more than that. It's for her benefit, not mine. That's it,
Thank you.
as long as Rodney finds the money.
Anything else from the audience? Is there a motion?
Move the budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Pam, thank you very much, and thank you for all your hard work. Very much appreciated.
Congratulations.
Page 77 in the budget book is our Veteran Services budget. Kelly Reyes Teixeira, our VSO, is in the room, and she would like to make her way to the podium in case there are questions. I will note similar, the broken record here, no change really in staffing. We do note some years ago, we started budgeting the Chapter 115 benefits that are provided in the health and benefits budget, which is a much larger budget. We had a number of years where demand was growing, and in a small budget like Lux, we were having to make budget transfers in order to keep up with the demand. So we found it much more effective to have the benefits budgeted in a larger budget where we can adjust on the fly depending on the needs that Kelly identifies through her interaction with our local veterans. So, any questions? We'd be happy to take those.
I'm all set.
No questions?
All set.
All set, thank you.
Good.
Paul?
I'm all set.
Kelly, is there anything you'd like to share?
Thank you, from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Great presentation, Kelly.
Kelly doesn't like public speaking, but she's actually very good at it when she has to, and she's very good at her job, and we are very lucky to have her in her role. So thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to work with Kelly on a number of things, and she's terrific. We are absolutely grateful for all of your hard work, and I know the veterans in town certainly are very appreciative. So thank you. Any questions from the audience? We don't want to let her off that easy. Bill? Oh, I let you have a fourth for this one. Okay.
Well, you don't get it fourth.
Is there a motion?
Move the budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Next is the recreation budget, and that is on page 79 in the budget book. We're joined by our recreation director, David Mountain, and some of the changes we see in this budget, you'll note in the narrative and on the screen. We made a market adjustment this year for our director of natural resources. We've increased the rate of pay for summer temporary staffing. There's a decrease here. We are upgrading our rec track permitting program, but we are moving 50% of the cost of the IT budget, and the rec revolving account is going to start covering the other 50% just based on the programs that are utilizing the service. So we're splitting that cost between tax supported and program supported. Some of the things, the strategic goals for the year, there's an effort here to update our open space and recreation plan this year. The assistant recreation director has been assisting with the strategic Danvers. So there's always a lot going on in recreation, and I know David would be happy to take, either of us would be happy to take questions, but most likely David's going to know the answers and I'm not, so.
Good evening, David Mountain. I'm more than glad to take any questions if you have any.
Arthur?
Well, this is one of the budgets I know pretty well after 20 years on the Recreation Committee. So I would only say that, again, like some of the other electric and the library, this is one of the programs that gives us a good bang for the buck in town and makes life really good for our town and the kids of our town. And they do a ton, they do it well. And so I'm biased, but I think Recreation does a tremendous job.
Thank you.
Eric?
No questions.
I really don't have any, but what's coming for Sandy Beach? That was one.
What's come Sandy Beach? Well, we have a grant, and we're looking to make some minimal changes and maintenance upgrades at the park. Not really improving the beach, but making it safer and cleaner.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
I just want to say thank you. I'm a past park instructor, and we utilize the park program a lot in my house, so it's a well-run program, and thank you.
Thank you.
What if you had $1 million? What are some of the park projects you'd like to do in town?
Well, $1 million wouldn't be enough, but Sandy Beach.
Well, my second
right?
question was going to be if
Sandy
you had
Beach,
another $1 million.
Bells Grove, we have a lot of places. Community center, we're at 20 million right now, so. But realistically, long-term, we have improvements coming on board for our playgrounds and our neighborhood parks. And I think it's important to maintain those and keep the neighborhood identities and give people those resources so they can enjoy their community and their local neighborhoods.
But Sandy Beach and Levels Grove would be the first two, you think?
Those are big-ticket items.
Yeah, no, I know.
Which obviously are stretches
Yeah.
to any budget, possibly grants down the road once we get the open space and rec plan. But obviously, they're diamonds in the rough. What waterfront property do we have in town that would be more valuable to have a great park at?
Okay.
Same thing with Bells Grove, with the outdoor possibilities there, and the accessibility there, that again could be a great place. But as we're all aware, there are limitations, and we can only do what we can do.
Okay. Thank you.
Mike?
So the only complaint I'm going to register with the Recreation Department is because now that I have toddlers and really the toddler, the school playgrounds, and I understand the school playgrounds are not for toddlers,
You're
but
correct. You've answered the question.
but they also should not be dangerous for toddlers either. And I had the opportunity against...
Are you about to tell us how you injured your hand?
No, no. This was against a very high-ranking official in the Recreation Department's advice of where to bring my 2-year-old granddaughter. But we brought it to the Smith Park, which is a beautiful park. And it's great. I would say if I was a 14-year-old boy, I would have the time of my life in that.
Correct.
But it was hairy. We had to stay on top of her everywhere she was.
Kind of what you have to do with a 2-year-old, Mike.
Well,
Recommend Endicott for toddlers.
well, yeah, Endicott, I know Endicott is great, but
In
that was...
Putnamville, right?
Putnam, we brought him to Putnamville, but that was my one thing is that I know that 2-year-olds become 7-year-olds, so sometimes we're not as concerned with 2-year-olds, so.
As you recall, we spoke about this at one
Yeah.
time, and I recommended not to go there
Yes.
with that age child, and you went against my advice. So when that playground was built, and like all our other playgrounds, especially with the schools, they all take on their own personality of the school and the timing of the people who are in the school. And at that time, when we built Smith School, we had some resources, and we also had a group of students and administration that wanted a challenging playground. So challenging still means safe, still means compliant, but it has challenges. And those challenges are definitely not for a 2-year-old, but they are for a 5 to 12-year-old. And that's what that playground is designed for. But if we do move a preschool program to Smith School, I think we could add a preschool playground over there at some time. But I don't think we're at that point. So the difficulty in building just a preschool playground in town is that we're not there to supervise and maintain that and watch that, and it gets used inappropriately and then becomes dangerous for 5 to 12-year-olds. So it's very difficult for a community to provide a preschool playground unless it is typically at a community center or a staffed area where it can be supervised. So I probably didn't answer what you wanted to hear, but that's
That's
reality.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just kind of bring it back there the next time, and
Yep.
she
Couple
either
years from
does
now.
it or she doesn't, tough luck.
Thank you.
Paul?
Well, David, I appreciate what you do with the playgrounds and the parks. And as a grandfather who, at one point, had 2 grandchildren that I think I've taken them to every single park in the town when they were 2 years old. But because I have such great athleticism, dexterity, and anticipation, they survived. But I know you got to be on top of them. Believe me, if you venture in with them, it's just, you have to be on top of them. Now, one's going to be a senior in high school, by the way, and the other one's going to be a senior in Maine, so they all survived.
Congratulations.
A couple of crazy questions, though. The telephones in the department, the telephones?
Yes.
I saw them, you eliminate them, or how does that work in town hall? I was just curious.
We reposition, our telephones mainly were, at one time that was used for Endicott Park, for the office there, and we've kind of transitioned that, and we were using that for cell phones, and our cell phones are paid fully out of our revolving fund. So we transitioned that out of the budget.
And then the only other question was beach sand. Now, I see it's a small item. Is that something
Sure.
you just can't?
So we used to budget annually, I think, about $1,800.
Yeah.
And that was an annual maintenance improvement for the beach when we staffed the beach and operated that at the beach. 2 years ago, we stopped staffing the beach during COVID, and along with that, we stopped maintaining it as a beach and focused on other areas of the park. So we no longer bring in additional sand that gets washed into the channel, and which creates other issues.
That's it.
Okay,
Great, excellent budgets, services are wonderful. Thank you.
thank you.
Questions from the audience? Go ahead, Bill.
You need to sit closer.
Yeah.
Just gotta sit closer to the podium next time.
Part of the whole thing.
That's his warm-up.
That's right.
Again, Bill Bradstreet, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. Is there a way, cost-effective, to reclaim this expensive sand that merely migrates into the channel? I know I've seen federal projects where they like to vacuum it up and put it back where it came from. I don't think we can do that, but there's a way for us to reclaim what we spent good money for.
Sure. Oh, perfect, thank you.
I'm not really familiar with a good way to do that. There are a lot of environmental impacts and restrictions that would do that. The closest thing, I think, Bill, would be dredging. When we dredge, that is going to be another expense, but to put that back on the sand would probably have some environmental impacts that we couldn't control.
Mr. Chair, I think the answer is we're working on getting the giant sand vacuum, and we'll let you know when that happens. Thank you.
Anything else? Is there a motion?
Move the budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, have a good evening.
Before David sits, I mean, we've been joking about the playgrounds, but on a serious note, I want to acknowledge, he knows every inch of every playground in town, and it is an annual struggle because there is never enough, there are never enough resources to do all the work that his careful planning calls for, and we try to keep up his partnerships with the schools, and we try to do the best we can, but David takes his work very seriously, and again, he could tell you the intimate details about all of our 20
A little
playgrounds in town.
obsession, I
but-
understand. Aaron gives me some therapy once in a while, but it is an obsession.
Yeah, to make it clear, he made it perfectly clear, don't take the
I
two-year-old
don't-
to
yeah.
the Smith School. Send him somewhere else, and I didn't listen
And
to
the
him.
new park at Thorpe is great. We're almost done with that, and it's a great partnership. I can't speak what a positive experience that was working with the school and the PAC and the resources they provided to help us build a playground like that. So we'll have one more down the road, and then we start the cycle all over again.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron, thank you and your team for being here.
Thanks, Aaron.
Smith Park is amazing. My kids use it every day.
Yeah.
So the problem we had was everyone has that smooth.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we put the two most fun budgets back-to-back, recreation and accounting. Our town accountant is not here. She's home celebrating the birth of her daughter Val, so she will not be with us this evening, Heather Varney. So I will be happy to answer any questions.
Certainly pass on our congratulations.
Absolutely. No notable changes to the budget. In fact, a slight decrease in expenses and contractually obligated salaries. Again, very level service budget. Happy to answer any questions.
Paul?
I have no questions.
Mike?
Nope, thank you.
Ted?
No, sir.
Aaron?
All set.
Wally?
I believe we're good.
Eric?
No questions.
And
All set?
Arthur? Questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
Move the budget.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Next, we have our assessing budget. We're joined by our Chief Assessor, John LaBelle, is here to answer any specific questions. You'll notice an increase in operating expenses of 16.8%. That's tied mostly to this being a revaluation year. So every 5 years, we're mandated by the state to do a reevaluation. It's a deeper dive into some of the different components. In the interim years, we're looking at neighborhoods for the land, building costs by style, et cetera. In a reval year, we're looking into some of the more deeper dive different components, such as kitchen costs, deck costs, updating all the tables in the system. It requires us to do some more in-depth field review inspections, so we engage our vendor for that. It also requires us to generate additional reporting to the Department of Revenue, which our vendor helps us with that as well. And with that, John or I are happy to answer any questions.
Paul?
No questions.
Mike?
So I'm going to put you on the spot with something, and you may not be able to answer this, but in your opinion, outside of obviously the external factors that result in the increases in valuation and the internal factors, somebody improves the house to one extent or another, what would be the biggest factor that would affect values within the community?
Demand.
Well, that's more of an external, I mean, that's something that's everything else.
Well,
I mean,
that pretty much drives everything.
Yeah.
Well, you don't make land anymore, so land never goes down, so that's always going to be increasing. But yeah, it's really more external things.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm getting at is that I mean, we've had some discussions over the course of the last 2 nights about our schools and about trying to find ways to be able to get to a certain point. And one of the big things that we've talked about with that is that the school system is a phenomenal driving factor in terms of the valuation of a community's property. I mean, the truth of the matter is that a very similar home in Lexington is worth more money than it is in Danvers, and there's reasons for that, and it's not just demand in Lexington as opposed to Danvers. And
Yeah, it's the community services, the location. Lexington, you have an airport right there. You have a lot easier access to Boston. That sort of thing. So yeah,
Okay.
it's location, location, location is what they always say in real estate. So, but again, that's really an external factor. It's nothing internally.
where have we been overarching? Can you, in terms of the increases in Danvers over the course of the last 2 years in valuations in comparison to some other communities? Are we just right in line with?
For the most part, with the surrounding communities, for the most part, yeah. Middleton's really kind of taken off a little bit more than some of the other ones. But yeah, for the most part, we're pretty much in line.
Thanks.
In a general overall.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
1,000 square,
Yeah, I mean, you gotta compare apples to apples to the best that you can, but,
Right.
and I think there's, one of the issues with Middleton is that obviously Middleton, that they tend to be larger lots, they tend to be slightly bigger houses.
Correct.
I'm more interested to see, how do we relate to what I would describe as similar communities like a Stoneham or a Wakefield or a Reading, that are roughly the same distance away, generally don't have T access, and again, that have a similar sort of zoning structure and
to be honest with you, I really haven't looked at like Wakefield and Stoneham. I don't look too much outside of Danvers for the most part anymore.
Yeah.
Some of the surrounding communities that I kind of keep an eye on.
Yeah.
But
All right, thanks.
unfortunately, I can't answer that question.
I don't have any questions, but Mike, I would point out that Middleton's elementary schools have faculty to student ratios of 10 to 1 and 9.5 to 1. And Highlands, I believe, is 14 to 1. That's it.
I'm all set.
Wally?
One question. Is the increase in consulting services, I think that's the right line, is that attributed to the reevaluation?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All set. Questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
Move the budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Next, we have the treasurer-collector budget. We're joined by treasurer-collector Jill Summit this evening. Again, excuse me, a level service budget. There's a slight increase in our software renewal, and that's, excuse me, offset by reductions in other areas. But other than that, as I said, a level service budget, and Jill and I are happy to answer any questions.
Arthur?
I'm all set.
No questions?
Well?
Questions?
All set.
Ted?
All set.
Mike?
Nope.
Paul?
All set.
Questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
Move it. Move the budget.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Jill, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Next, we have our debt service budget, and this is one of the budgets where we like to show not just the budgeted cost, but the impact on the tax levy. As you can see, principal is pretty flat. Interest is going down based on our debt schedule. Since the last year, we haven't had any major permanent borrowings. The gross debt service, again, is a slight decrease. We also have a slight decrease in our use of the debt stabilization fund. That's in line with our shaving of the peak, as we've called it, over the past few years of phasing in Smith School debt. And then you'll see a reduction in the slip fee offset as the most recent dredging debt service project has now fully been paid off. That leads to a net debt service increase of 3.46%. We also, I know, Mike, you had a couple questions. $94 million in outstanding debt. Of that, $55 million of it is school debt. And of that $55 million, 70% of it is level debt service versus equal principal.
How much was
Happy to
level,
answer
I'm
any
sorry, what was the last number? How much was the level debt?
Level debt makes up 70% of the $55 million in outstanding debt. And so in the next chart, we talk about, before we go to questions, so this is a table of our debt service. I'm sorry?
You're looking at your screen.
No, you can't see my laptop?
You're presenting yourself.
Yes.
Weren't you in charge? I thought you were in charge of the
I know,
clicker.
see what happens, see? That's what I
What
get.
does he do?
You know. So the blue is our total existing debt. The green is a small portion of the Smith School final borrowing once we achieve our final closeout with the MSBA. And then red, we always carry in our debt modeling $1 million a year. We don't always use it. Sometimes that might be something like the Highlands roof, which was $3 million. Some years we may have zero, and then another year we could have, for example, as the chief mentioned earlier, a fire truck. So we like to build in that we, on average, will have $1 million in additional new service. And the point on the blue bar, as we mentioned, was that a lot of that level debt service means that it's not declining. So that is just there for the next 20, 30 years. And as we stack debt on top, that's where we can run into some funding issues. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Can I jump in for a second?
Sure.
Before we take, is there a laser in here?
There is.
So there was some discussion about, you know, the structuring of municipal debt, I think at a previous meeting. We're familiar with mortgages where we pay the same amount every month, and when you make your first mortgage payment, most of what you're paying is interest, and when you make your last mortgage payment, most of what you're paying is principal. And what rating agencies want to see, what the financial markets that interact with towns and cities want to see, is that your debt curve does this. It goes up, and then it drops rapidly. And the style of debt, and I think Ted alluded to this last night, they want to see declining debt service. So your principal payments, you're paying principal right up front, and you're continually paying the same amount of principal, and it results in dramatically less interest being associated with that debt over the life of the bond. If you look at page Roman numeral 4 in your budget books, we have a summary of our financial policies, and I'll just let you know, our debt service policy, which comes from the rating agencies and GASB, which are the standards that we look to, say that we will keep our debt below 10% of our net operating budget. I will tell you, in conversations with the rating agencies, we could be at 15% and they wouldn't bat an eye in terms of that being a red flag. Our debt load as a percent of our budget is 5.67%. We have incredibly low debt service. We're not structuring it in a very sustainable way, but it's low. We are at our levy limit. So often people talk about us, not being able to borrow, and it's two separate things. We are at the statutory limit that is set by Proposition 2.5. So in order to borrow more, we would have to exceed our levy limit. But the amount of debt that the town carries is actually very, very low compared to a lot of our municipal peers. And that seems like an incongruent thing, but it's related. So we're at our levy limit because we, the menu of services we provide, we're up against the statutory limit that is set by the state. We don't have a lot of debt. We don't structure it, again, we structure it in a sort of a backwards way in the eyes of the rating agencies. And where that matters is that, and we talked about this during the audit with the select board, and Ronnie's going to correct me, I believe the standard is that they want to see something like 60% of your debt being retired within the first 10 years of your debt load. And we're below that because of the way we structure the debt. I think we're in the 50s. If we were to stack a third level debt project on top of our existing, we would drop even lower. And at some point that starts to become a red flag because the rating agencies are going to see that you are pushing your debt service way out to avoid costs in the near term. They don't like that because that creates big liabilities for the finance committee that will be sitting here 15 years from now, the town manager that will be sitting here 15 years from now, the town meeting that will be making decisions 15 years from now. So I wanted to provide a little more context in addition to what the finance director was talking about.
So if I understand correctly, the annual debt service contribution that we make from the town budget can't increase because when it combined with all the other commitments we make each year, we're at our levy limit.
Correct.
So, as opposed to our debt capacity, absent the constraint of the levy limit.
So we could double our debt load and the rating agencies wouldn't bat an eye because we would be
Right.
very consistent.
But we'd be in violation of Prop 2.5, and we have to cut something else.
Correct.
Understood.
I mean, I guess the other question I'd have with it too is, and this is always, I have my mental breakdown every year when we deal with this, but I'm also assuming that our decision to level fund that debt also resulted in, at the end of the day, if we look at the Smith School project, we bonded roughly $28 million total for that project, all things gross, I mean net. But yet our ultimate payment that we're going to make on that is going to be substantially more because we're going to pay substantially more interest over that period of time had we not. So yes, it was a $27 million bit of construction, $28 million bit of construction cost back to us after you net out all of the state aid and the various funding mechanisms with that. But at the end of the day, rather than paying that back to a total of $37 million, we're going to pay it back to a total of $42 million. So in essence, we're paying $5, $6, $10 million more over time because of the decision that we made to do it this way. Is that a fair?
Those numbers will be slightly different, but that's accurate.
Yeah.
What percent of the debt is fixed interest rate? And is all of it on a schedule such
Yeah,
that when it matures, it's not like there's not like a balloon payment at the end or something that we'd have to refinance?
No, they all have fixed, I mean, the coupon may vary year to year, but they're all fixed for the life of the debt service.
Okay. So that's a good thing, at least in this
Right now
interest
it
rate
is,
environment. All right. The one, just a comment. One thing that would be illustrative here on the spreadsheet that you guys have is if there was a column with the remaining principal. Like you have the amount issued, but the sort of amount outstanding or balance remaining would be nice to have here too. That's it.
Paul, do you have anything?
Yeah, first of all, excuse me, first of all, I never would impress anybody with my understanding of bonding and finances, like maybe some of the other folks up here. But I'll tell you one thing, I'd never buy a house with these terms. And I bought 4 of them. Never happened. Wouldn't buy a car that way. Never happened. I mean, I look at this, and I see what's happened with the middle school, and then all of a sudden, you know, I understand why we have to borrow when you talk about the middle school, and you talk about the Danvers High School, and then you talk about Smith School. You talk about library, HVC, town hall. I mean, look at all these items down here. And we're just carrying that load and load and load and load out there forever, it seems like. And then you look at, and you say, well, you got a bond, I think, if I'm looking at this correctly, you got a bond $528,000 for a school roof. And then you're bonding out Great Oak roof, Thorpe roof, Highlands roof. I'll just go back to this and I'll leave it at it. You go back to the top of, and this is no criticism against town management or everything, because this town doesn't want to go prop over 2.5 or debt exclusion. It's a fact. And we wear badges. I don't. But people wear badges around the area that we've never passed. You know, it's a fact. But I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't do it that way. I just would not do it that way. But I go back to the debt service overview. And I go to this statement. This long-term obligation impacts both current and future residents. Accumulation of these fixed obligations can put a burden on the town's ability to pay future operating costs or debt service. It is crucial, therefore, that the town effectively plans for any long-range borrowing. What are we going to do when we have to build the Department of Public Works building? We're going to go out again. I don't know how many millions that's going to cost, and I don't know what we can get from the state or anything else like that, but I'm going to tell you something. Here we go again. See? So that's my statement on it, and I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks. Mike, you're all set.
Well, again, this concept that we have within this community among certain people, which is all we care about is what an individual person pays. It's all about the individual person. Can't charge these people any more money. That person can't pay any more money. And when we've taken that attitude consistently, and this sheet here reflects all of these areas with it. When you look at how much more money we as a community spent in financing all of these projects because we weren't willing to charge an individual person some more. So yes, those individual people in the short term saved a little bit of money in their tax bill. But we as a community have expended tens of millions of dollars. We may be approaching spending as much as $100 million more over the time that I've been involved in municipal government for the last 35 years because of just that one belief. Now, we get great services, we do a lot of things wonderful here, but I think people really have to realize that literally we have spent tens of millions of dollars more than we had to if we just made the tough choice and done the right thing.
Thanks, Mike. Ted?
I echo what the two gentlemen to my left said. That's it.
Aaron?
All set.
Wally?
I think we're unanimous on that. So I don't need to add to it.
Eric?
Yeah, I echo, and I'll just ask the insane question. We can't refinance.
We actually refinanced last year, so anytime the opportunity comes up, we do refinance. Unfortunately, as refunding has become more common, they've structured the coupons so that the higher coupons are up front and lower coupons down the bottom to disincentivize refinancing. So we will still examine every opportunity to do so, but those are becoming fewer.
Thank you.
Arthur?
Yeah, the only thing that I would add to Mike's, what Mike said is that it wasn't really that afraid of making the tough choice, not really that tough of a choice. You just had to think it through a little bit, right? But we talked about a lot of things the last couple of nights that we would like to be able to do, like to be able to provide additional services, education, things like that, and this is one of the reasons why we can't do it. So, again, I think we're all in agreement on that.
Yeah, I certainly share your, my colleagues' frustrations, so. Yeah. Any comments from the audience or questions? Is your hand up, or are you just stretching?
Are you saying, give me 5?
I'll give you a high five.
He's going in a different path this
Shortcut.
time. Yeah.
He heard your message.
Somebody give him a mic.
Bill Bradstreet, town meeting member, precinct 1. The comment was made that it's gonna cost us a lot of money to build a consolidated location on the old state hospital grounds to consolidate our different divisions. Having said that, we know it's gonna cost money. The locations that are being vacated, is it possible they can be sold, or are you planning on selling them to help pay for some of the debt for the new building? Or are we gonna hold on to them for another use?
So that,
I'm not trying to put you on the
no,
spot.
that's okay. I can give we have a fall town meeting that's being planned for a variety of reasons, including the MBTA zoning that Brian was talking about. And we think that the Public Works facility will, excuse me, will be ready to come to town meeting to have a conversation about some of these things. So the landfill project that we talked about the other night, town meeting approved borrowing of $4.5 million to set up that operation and manage that operation. The town engineer conservatively is estimating that we may clear $3 million in profit at the end of that. So we may spend $4.5 million and take in $7.5 or $8 million or even more. But conservatively, that's where he's looking. And some of the conversation we had at the select board level was that revenue may be put toward the Public Works facility. So depending on the timing of that, that could be part of the equation. Some of these costs will be shared by water, sewer, and electric because we'll be developing new office space and shops and garage for their equipment as well. And then I think one of the questions that will go before town meeting is what to do with some of those properties that are being left behind. So I think all of that is part of the discussion. But right now, we're still at a point where we're working with design engineers to determine what the footprint requirements for each division might look like on the properties that we have access to. So a lot more to follow, Bill.
I realize we're not making any new land, so what we have is worth something. And I'd assume it's going to increase in value. I don't have a bottomless pocket, not as the town. It's just to squeeze as much as we can out of what we have to pay for what we need. My opinion.
Thanks, Bill. Any other comments, questions, motion?
Move the budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And next, we have our Danvers Retirement System appropriation. As we mentioned a little bit on night 1, this is driven by a biannual actuarial study and governed by PEREC. We are to be fully funded by law by 2040, by their very strong recommendation of 2036. Danvers currently has a funding schedule that have us fully funded and the liability reduced by 2035. We're at 64.1% funded based on our most recent valuation. That includes adjusting our assumed rate of return, which again was a recommendation of the ratings agencies. Again, with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. As you can see, it's an almost 8%, and roughly 8% is the annual increase we should expect, if not completely through 2035, at least through the next several years.
Arthur?
I don't have any questions.
Eric?
No questions. I don't have any questions.
Aaron?
All set.
Ted?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. What was the performance of our assets in the last fiscal year?
We lost
the last,
over 10%. I'd have to look up the exact figure, but we had as most did, we had a bad calendar year, 22.
And then, was there a change in manager sometime in the last 24 months?
So we recently went out to bid for a new investment consultant. Our previous one we had for many years, we moved into a different direction and selected Siegel Marco as the current investment consultant for the retirement system.
Was it performance-driven or more price-driven?
It wasn't price-driven.
Just performance or
The
whatever?
board wanted to go in a different direction.
Okay.
Mike?
I'm good, thank you.
Paul?
Yeah, could you just, under your page 88, Rodney, custodial services, is that, explain what that is for me, please.
That is, so custodial in the sense that they hold the cash. So our bank holds it, as opposed to,
Okay.
we're not spending that much on.
Well, I know what it wasn't. I just want to know what.
I do make a mess in
idea
the
what it
office, but I
was.
don't make that big of a mess, I promise.
Okay. And the legal services went up a little bit. I was just curious of that.
So again, with the new investment consultant, we've already issued a couple of requests for proposals to change some of our managers. We anticipate that may occur a little bit more over the next year or so, so we wanted to make sure that we had the legal budget to make sure that Murphy Hesse can review all our RFPs and contracts as we engage.
Thank you. That's it.
Questions from the audience?
Move the budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Sat here for 3 nights to talk to you guys right now. We have the benefits and insurance budget. Overall, it's a pretty level budget, 2% increase. That is driven by our health insurance renewal, which you're seeing up there is 4%. However, that's offset by the Medicare coming in lower than projected, and this is, we're phasing out, we're in year 2 of the HSA contributions the town made when we switched health insurance, and the opt-out program, we've kind of started to level out from that, so we're seeing, we're able to right-size the budget based on those 2 items. And then we have the more than 50% of OPEB, as we discussed earlier. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Paul?
Just for my own information, the opt-out program is when an employee decides to opt out of the health insurance, or how does that work? I mean, just explain it to me.
So our opt-out program we implemented about 2 years ago. It allows an employee to opt out who has health insurance elsewhere. They have to be on our insurance for a certain period of time, and then we make payments for a 1-year period. It's equal to about 25% of the cost of the health insurance plan that they were on.
Go to a spouse's insurance plan, something like that, yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. All right, thank you, that's it.
Mike?
The sick leave incentive, in which unions do we still have sick leave incentives with?
Almost all of our unions have that. During the last round of contract negotiation, we did change that for a handful of unions to provide an incentive at retirement where they can buy back a certain amount of days. It becomes a little bit more predictable and easier for us to budget that way.
Right. That's it, thank you.
Ted?
Can you just, when you say that 50% of the general fund OPEB contribution is funded within the tax levy, where's the other part of it come from?
So as is tradition, there'll be a warrant article funding the additional $250,000
And then where?
out of free cash.
Out of free cash. So, I know that we've kind of been more aggressive in our assumption about receipts this year, or non-tax or non-tax receipts. If we've been traditionally funding some of the OPEB out of free cash, is that going to be more difficult? If we're not going to, if it's less likely that we have positive surprises in our non-tax revenue?
It's good news, bad news. So the good news is our total contribution the total contribution is $1 million this year. 550 of it comes from general fund, so 300 of that is included in the tax levy. The other 250 is in free cash. One of the 2 financial goals that we set when we revamped the health plan, and we knew that we were going to create some budget savings then, was to bring capital outlay. The capital outlay varies from year to year, but I don't think we've ever spent less than $600,000 on cruisers, dump trucks, lawnmowers, tractors, et cetera, in a given year. So we may spend $1 million one year, but we never spend zero. And so one of the goals was to move $500,000 or $600,000 of capital outlay into the tax levy. So we wanted to get both of those out of free cash into the tax levy, which gives us, we become less reliant on generating the surplus. We didn't get any of the capital in. We did get 300 of the OPEB in. We increased our local receipts by $1.25 million this year to balance the budget. If next year's free cash number comes in considerably lower than that, the OPEB contribution is not the first thing that we would cut. We would honor that because again, rating agencies, they don't have a fully funded date, but if you have a plan and you're not sticking to that plan, that's going to be a negative in there. It'll be a red flag in the rating. So we would end up deferring.
Maybe some sort of capital CapEx that we defer.
Exactly.
That's it.
Aaron?
Can you just remind me how many employees we cover insurance?
We cover a total of 1,355, which includes 556 active, 284 retired teachers, and 515 retired municipal side. The retirees could include spouses as well, and that was as of 2 months ago.
Okay, thank you. Have we looked with the insurance provider to be self-insured? Have we negotiated rates to see if there's any benefit in us owning insurance through them? You know, we can tailor our insurance.
You guys need to take a minute?
It's okay if you say not yet.
I
and
get
you'll
in
come
trouble
back
for
to
jumping
it,
in when
but-
I'm not wanted. I was going to talk about historically, but I'm going to let Jen start the answer, and we'll see where it goes.
We do historically evaluate our insurance. We have to go through a process of negotiating insurance changes with our union employees and retirees. We did that almost 3 years ago when we changed. We were with Maya, which is the Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance.
Yep.
For many years, we left. We went to Tufts. About 3 years ago, we came back to Maya, and that process helped us realize the cost savings for both the town and the employees. It is a large process to go through. We do keep an eye on it. We look at it frequently, and I'll let Steve take it from here.
That was great. All I would add is that my understanding, the town many years ago was insured.
Okay.
But they once you make the switch to being fully insured, the town has drawn any residual that was left in the trust has sort of drawn down and expended. So for us to go back to self-insured at this point, I don't know where the cash would come from to do that. But
It's also difficult when you have a range of ages that you're trying to support, right? So when you have retirees and then current employees, I understand that. How successful were you in transferring employees from regular insurance over to HSA?
I would say the team was incredibly successful. So that change we kicked off in early March or early February, and then about 2 weeks later we shut down for COVID. So the HR team at the time transferred everybody remotely from home when we were not spun up for work from home. It was incredible because they had to touch every single employee and retiree.
Yep.
They had to re-enroll them. We saw more than the carrier predicted we would see go to a high deductible account. We spent a considerable amount of time doing education. I think we saw around 25%. I think it was even higher than that. It was
That's good for
a good
initial.
number. In there, we have seen some change to that as employees either retire or family circumstances change or life circumstances change.
Yep.
But we still do have a decent number enrolled in the high deductible plan.
Good, thank you, that's all.
Wally? Eric?
So one of my questions was answered, and so have we always covered 70% and 70-30 and 50-50? Has that been our standard coverage?
That is also negotiated through the process with the union.
Got it.
All set. Anything from the audience?
Move the budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And next is the HR budget. We are joined tonight by Philippe Adelaide, who is our new HR director. He joined us just before the new year. And Jasmine Ramon, who is our director of equity and inclusion. This budget is actually, we're showing a decrease in this budget. This comes from filling some vacancies after we filled them and the department settled. We realized the actual cost we need to be carried. We also recently promoted our HR generalist to assistant director based on needs of the office. And the office did request an additional position in this budget, an HR assistant, based on the load in the office that they're seeing. They have a temp in there right now that they're using from some of the funds that were created by the vacancy of the director over the past fiscal year. While that request is supported by the budget team, it was not included to be funded in this budget. And Philippe, Jasmine, and I are happy to take any questions you may have.
Arthur?
So I'm sorry, the position that you were talking about, that they were requested, we're not filling at this point?
It's not, it's supported, but it's not funded.
And what is that something that you're going to keep looking at going forward?
Yes.
Okay. I'm fine, thanks.
Eric?
My question is on advertising. Is that for the department or for the town?
That is for the town. So this budget supports the advertising for all positions within the town, and also in that budget you have medical costs, and that's for all medical exams within the town.
So 2 follow-up questions. Where do we advertise, and is that enough money? Given what we know about finding people, it just doesn't look like enough money.
We would
I'm
always
just-
take more money. I'll take a line from the fire chief. We are doing well. A number of places where we advertise, where municipal jobs are advertised, you can often do it for free
Okay.
because we are a government entity. But we utilize our website, social media, LinkedIn, Indeed, and areas that we can share. And the team has also developed a pretty extensive network to be able to share out.
The free or the paid LinkedIn and Indeed account?
We use the free, and then we're also resharing it through our own. So if the HR office posts a job for finance, Jill might be resharing it, Rodney, and it grows from there. And we also have a great network of local colleges that we're able to post to.
Handshake?
Handshake, yep.
It's a smaller number. Okay. No further questions.
Wally?
Hiring's an issue across the board. Have you considered maybe a job fair here for an afternoon where people could come in, apply, interview, and it could be a group thing altogether? I live in town, and I'm personally not aware of all of the shortages that we have, and so just wondering how it can be communicated to a larger audience.
More advertising.
Yeah.
I hope you live in town since you're on the
Well,
finance.
yeah, but I mean, I'm just not hearing about it as much, and there's clearly a shortage across the board, right?
Yep, I think
Talk to my mother a
job
lot.
fair here locally is a great idea. The office does participate in job fairs. They were at Salem State last week for a job fair, and I think I heard they had about 4 applications received in the past week from that. We also participated last year in a job fair with our neighboring communities at Mass Hire in Salem, and had great success for that. So we are out there at job fairs, but we could certainly look into doing one here.
Thank you. And I just want to say what you're doing with DEI across the town is excellent, and just keep it up. Thank you.
Ted?
I don't believe I have any questions.
Mike?
I'm going to do the thing that I always hate when people do it, but on the mileage reimbursement, I'm assuming that somebody else is getting mileage reimbursement, that's why it doubled.
Yeah, now with a fully staffed office, we have more people going to trainings.
Yeah.
So that is both, I believe, the training and the membership and dues went up, and that is the same reason.
Thanks.
And I'll just say, sort of, you're not asking the question, and I actually know better than to answer questions that aren't being asked, but I'm going to answer this one anyway. We have a number of employees, we have some employees in the organization who are on auto allowances, and typically we start with mileage over time. If there's a track record where somebody is putting in for mileage is equal to some of our auto allowance, it becomes a lot easier to convert somebody over. They don't have to track that, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah.
you'll notice differences from department to department in terms of that.
All set, Mike?
Yeah.
Paul?
I'm all set, thank you.
Great. Anything from the audience? Is there a motion?
Move the budget, please.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
At the end.
thought we're done.
No, we're not done.
You guys can use this door, you don't have to go. It's not any less conspicuous going that way.
Yeah.
You're gonna see you on camera.
I have a Jolly Rancher.
Trace through decaf back there.
Just a moment. Can you send the candy down this way? Arthur, you've been
Hoarding it.
hoarding
Yeah,
it.
it's mostly Eric.
Judging by the wrappers, I would say you're probably right.
Thank you.
It's just the town clerk.
Saving the best for last?
Yes, last but certainly not least is the town clerk's office. Kathy Ellsworth, our town clerk, is here to answer any questions. As you can see, it's a 12% increase in salary and wages, and that's driven by a change in the staffing that occurred this year.
Kathy, I thought we gave you more money last year.
You may have.
Okay.
She wants you to know, DPW came in at 11.88% though, so she's not the highest, but is.
We had a vacancy in
We
our
didn't
part-time.
approve that budget.
That's true, actually.
That's true.
Sorry,
See where they end up.
Poor Dave.
You took it well.
He did okay.
For the end of the night.
So we had two part-time receptionists. We had a vacancy in one of those positions, and we converted it to a full-time in-office position that helps to address some staffing needs associated with the expanded voting options, such as vote by mail, as well as some administrative work with the expanded options for registering to vote as well. With that, Kathy or I, mostly Kathy, will be happy to answer any questions.
Arthur?
So what's the customer service rep? Sorry, Kathy.
The customer service position was the receptionist out front, and we had that as a job share position, so we had two 20-hour people doing that. We had a morning person and an afternoon person. One of those people left. The other person picked up some hours, but not the full 40 hours that we were covering there. So it's a slight reduction in that position.
I like that, .79. We have a
That's what it
.79
is.
person. We really are budgeting down to the penny.
Very precise.
That's all, Kathy, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to get you up.
That's okay, no problem.
I'm fine, thanks.
Eric?
So I'm just gonna end and say thank you for what you do, and that behind-the-scenes work, is well done. We know it, because when issues don't come up, things are going very well. I just want to acknowledge that in addition to the library, fire, and police, I just want to acknowledge the clerk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wally?
I have nothing. I know this.
I don't know if this falls under you. Our voting rate is so low in town. What can we do to drive more voters? I mean, there's a lot of complaints. Most of the complainers don't actually vote. What can we do to get more voters?
It's generally drive by what's on the ballot. So from year to year, it depends on if there's a competition, perhaps for a select board, if there are two people running for one spot, that can kind of drive the count. This particular election coming up in May, there's a ballot question that may drive the vote up.
Okay.
But
That's
my
it for
role
me.
is to run the election, not, kind of help people campaign.
No, I understand. It's just more, how do we get residents to actually want to come and vote? The mail-in voting is great. I think that helps. Yeah. Thank you.
I think the other piece of it too, though, is to ensure that we have informed citizens voting. Because if you're coming in to vote and you look down at a piece of paper and you're voting for your town meeting members, for example, and
I
you don't know
agree.
who any of them are, you don't really know what you're voting for, so.
Just the last school
But
committee election was just
totally get it.
shockingly low. And it was a pretty competitive election,
Yeah.
right? So I was just surprised to see such low numbers. That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ted?
I do not have any questions this evening. Thank you.
Mike?
No, the clerk does a fantastic job. Her office is certainly right up there with all the other ones that we've talked about in terms of the wonderful thing that they do. I do have one complaint for you. Keep the candy away from Dave at the meeting.
Oh,
All
that's to
right.
keep him awake. As we all get tired during the day, we need a little pick-me-up.
I don't know, you notice he, all of a sudden, I've seen a couple of times where he looked like Eric, he had the candy bar right in front of him, and he was just...
Paul?
Again, Mike
We have
getting
the
himself
candy
into
ball
trouble.
down there. Thank you, Kathy, for everything you do. I appreciate it. And I just wanted to clear up, you're having 2 elections in fiscal year '24, is that right?
2024, so we will have this March state election, and then September.
Primary, March primary.
I'm sorry, primary.
The March primary
So there'll be a March primary
in 2024,
in 2024.
right? But then, okay, that's right, you're right. I was thinking fiscal year, by the time you get to November of
It's a new
fiscal
fiscal
year
year.
25.
There'll be 2 more.
Yeah, that's what threw me off a little bit. That's it, thank you. I'm all set.
Questions from the audience? Bill? We're being very generous with the questions tonight. That's okay.
Yeah.
We'll remember that in a couple
Yeah.
of weeks.
Again, Bill Bradstreet, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. Kathy does an excellent job.
Thank you.
Through you, by personal experience, it's because she's a caring person. And the town is lucky to have her. So, show her the appreciation she deserves.
It's an excellent question, thank you.
Thank you for your question. Kathy, I think
Were we questioning if Kathy was a caring person, or was it?
How would you answer that?
I think, Kathy, I think the easiest way for us to show our appreciation would be to pass your budget. So
think so.
with that, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed? No one.
Despite its monumental increase.
But if you did want to give more money, I'm happy to take that too.
I think you should reach out to Dave Lane and say that make sure that he knows that your budget got
That my
passed.
budget
So,
passed. I will.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up tonight, we have I don't know if we describe it as an invitation or a welcome opportunity to join, for a couple of us, if possible, to join the Select Board next Tuesday, which is April 18th. Last night especially, we had some very spirited conversations based around the DPW budget, specifically trash, and coupled in with the school budget. And if we could have a couple of volunteers to go. Eric, are you available as the new vice chair? I'm actually out of town next week, so I cannot go.
That explains the vote from earlier tonight.
Look at that. Everyone has been waiting in mystery to figure out why that happened. And are there any other volunteers who'd like to go and share our thoughts?
I'll go if you
I can go also.
Okay, great. You're all welcome to go, but
Just remind me of the time.
it's their meeting is they start. They're an older group. They start at 6:30, and
Here or the high school?
right here in this
Okay.
room.
And it's the 18th. Okay.
Anything else we? And we do want to. I believe you have a motion to change we set up for the Wednesday night of warrant articles to circle back to that. And I think you've got a motion to move that to Thursday, is that correct?
That is that's exactly correct.
I'm not looking at you, I'm looking at Paul.
I know, but I'm answering for him.
Okay, well, as.
It gets late sometimes, we
yes.
want to make sure.
Well, he hasn't had any difficulties in playgrounds, so.
I think, that's right. I think
Paul,
he-
do you have a motion?
I think he may use that agility to smack you.
Non-combative. I move to move my tabled motion of the Department of Public Works tax-supported budget to Thursday, April 27, 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. So we will meet 3 nights that week. And I believe that's it.
Thank you.
Any questions? Great. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Night. Is it ever okay to come late? The kids' science.
That was good.
Wednesday, I just want to